So I am going to do lots of introductory things and stuff. So please feel free to still get your drinks, snacks, and all of that while I do some introductions here. So first off, my name, hello, I'm Michelle Carlson. I'm a librarian here for OPL, and I am thrilled and honored to be your host tonight. Before we get started, I'd love to know, by a show of hands, and for our virtual friends in the chat, who has been to a book bash before? Yeah, awesome. Okay. And then who is at our very first book bash? Yay! And lo and behold, this is our 9th book bash and our 3rd in-person event. So has there anybody that's been to all of them? Yeah, there you are. I was like, where are our friends? Yeah. Thank you all so much for being here. Is this anybody's first book bash? Wow. Amazing. So glad to have you all here with us and hope to have you become regulars like some of our others. I want to give you a rundown of how this night will go. We do have both an in-person and a virtual audience, and while your experiences will be different, we're going to try and make those as exciting as we can for everyone. So some housekeeping. Welcome to our library administration building. We're thrilled to host our first public event here at our administrative office, and we want to ensure everyone has a great night. So restrooms. We have some women's restrooms located on the west side of the building, over through the curtains there, and just follow the stanchions and you will get there. Additionally, we have gender neutral and accessible restrooms on the east side of the building. So if you go back out through those doors and then follow the stanchions again. That one's a little farther away. And there are staff members stationed around to help you find your way, so don't hesitate to ask for assistance. If they are a staff person working tonight, they'll have their name tag on, but otherwise some of our staff are just here to have fun. All right, and for refreshments, please help yourself to the drinks. There are both alcoholic and non-alcoholic. In the front corner of the room is our hard bar, and over here in the coolers and on the table are our soft drinks. And of course, the snacks over to my right as well. At check-in, you received your 2 drink tickets, which will get you 2 alcoholic drinks of your choice. Emily and Randy, thank you, Emily and Randy, for being here. Our bartenders, they will hook you up with your favorite beverage. There's no ticket for the soft drinks, seltzers, water, or snacks, so be sure to grab some snacks and candy for yourself and your table. As I said, there's a lot here. So also, as I mentioned earlier, this is our first public event at our administration office, the hub of our library system. So we kindly ask that you stay within the book bash area, of course, except for if you need those restrooms. And again, thank you for being here tonight. We hope you have a fantastic time and enjoy this evening's festivities. If you have any questions, ask any OPL staff member. All right, and tonight we have 7 different OPL staff members who are going to each share 5 books that they are excited about. We're spanning our collection with fiction and nonfiction, new and old, print and digital, and invoking more feelings than Inside Out 2. We'll split the evening into 2 halves, so you'll hear from our first 4 book talkers, then we'll have a 10-minute intermission so everyone can top off drinks and snacks, and then we'll return with our final 3 book talkers. We are also going to have some commercial breaks as we have some amazing new events planned for the upcoming months. Attendees, both here and online, have a chance to win some bookish prizes. So if you're here in person, make sure you've dropped your raffle in the spinner at the entry table. And if you're online, make sure you fill out the survey linked at the bottom of your screen. Our prizes this evening: there's a $25 gift card to the Book Nook, a $25 and $50 gift card to the Bookworm, and a $25 gift card to the Next Chapter. And we have 8 copies of The War Begins in Paris by Theodore Wheeler, our 2024 Omaha Reads book, which I'll be telling you more information about that later. All right, so during our book talks, our staff here will be sharing about some different OPL programs. One will be the OPL Reading Challenge. The Omaha Public Library Reading Challenge is a staff-created series of reading challenges to push and inspire you into new literary realms. Take on 1 challenge each month or complete them all on your own timeline. Finish all 12 to qualify for a prize. You each have a copy of the official Reading Challenge notebook to track your progress and is a great keepsake. Has anyone completed this year's challenges yet? All right. Way to go. Yeah. If not, again, you're going to hear about some books that can help you complete those challenges. We're also going to be having our book talkers share about a title from our book club bag collection. Our collection contains over 700 titles, and they are great for book clubs as it is a book club in a bag, and it has 7 to 12 copies of the same book and a set of discussion questions for you. Our bag collection is also going through a makeover, so keep on the lookout for some new bags. And you should also hopefully have a copy of the Book Bash booklet. That is yours to take notes. The slides on this screen will have a little circle to indicate the book talker's name and what page number you can find that book they're talking about on. And it's your place that you can write down all of the notes that you would like to note which ones you're going to buy, which ones you're going to put on your TBR, and all of that jazz. And again, if you are interested in taking home the books you hear about this evening, you have a couple options. Our friends from the Bookworm are here tonight, and you can purchase our titles and a handful of others from them. And after the close of our program this evening, OPL's mobile library, Poppy, will be out in the parking lot where you'll be able to check out copies of this evening's titles as well. And also on your tables is a link to the QR code that will take you to the book list of all the books mentioned tonight. And if you're online, we'll drop that link for you now. Thanks. If you have any questions or issues throughout the evening, please connect with any of the OPL staff members with their name tags. And for our online folks, Ashley Hammernick will be in the chat sending you links and answering any questions you might have. All right. And finally, let's meet our book talkers and hear about some great books. Yeah. So first we have Nicole here. Nicole is a librarian for the Downtown Library, and she enjoys stories featuring enemies to lovers, slow burns, age gap, and dual POVs. Her reading hot take is that pretty books with sprayed edges are not for reading. They are a trophy and for display only and should not be read. Lastly, the final Jeopardy categories that would have her betting it all would be obscure Vine references, the novel Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and Taylor Swift lyrics, just to name a few. Nicole starts on page 6. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you for the intro, Michelle. Can y'all hear me okay? All right, so my first book of the night is City of Laughter by Tamim Fruchter. Look at that gorgeous pink cover. Even, like, just the cover alone, you should pick it up. To start, I want to share a quote from the book so you have an idea of what you're getting into. Quote, Shiva Margolin had no idea what she was doing, end quote, which is honestly super relatable. Shiva is reeling from her first queer breakup, and she's grieving her dad who recently passed away. She's 32, working a very unexciting job at a nonprofit in New York City, and she just feels stuck. She's looking for that certain je ne sais quoi to make her life feel purposeful. So she does what any self-respecting millennial will do, and she goes back to grad school. Shiva's maternal line has always been a mystery. Her mom, Hannah, never tells her anything, and she never met her grandma Sil. So Shiva decides to study Jewish folklore and finally get to the bottom of her family history. Her research takes her to Poland, where she finally unearths the supernatural secrets that plague her maternal line. The narration is in third-person omniscient, so we get to move through 4 generations of women and see how their relationships with themselves and each other weave together. I especially liked reading about the mother-daughter dynamic between Hannah and Shiva because the author presents a very fragile, very strained relationship where there is so much tension, but there's also so much love, and it really captures that complicated relationship you can have with your mom. They are trying to find a new normal without the glue who held them together, and it's grading both of them. City of Laughter by Tamim Fruchter fulfills the mythology and folklore reading challenge prompt. This book is filled with Jewish folklore, some of it made up, some of it's true, but all of it was super interesting to learn about. Next up, let's talk about smut, shall we? A Soul to Keep by Opal Rain is a monster romance recommended to me by my friend Emily, and I think I've read it at least 3 times this year alone. So if that tells you anything. The story focuses on Rhea and Orpheus. Rhea's family was murdered by demons, and instead of the village helping her, they shun her because they believe she is a harbinger of bad omens. When it comes time to give the brooding, scary Duskwalker a human sacrifice, naturally, Rhea is the village's first choice. It's either give herself over to him or be locked in a cell for however long the villagers decide she deserves. She chooses to live out her life in the Vale with Orpheus and realizes maybe it's not so bad after all. So I read a lot of romance. It's probably my most read genre. And when I feel like I'm reading the same love story over and over again, and I start to skim, I know I need to find something with a fresh little sparkle. And this one did the trick. It's the familiar formula with tons of aw moments and a healthy dose of steam. Except the male love interest just happens to be a monster. Honestly, Orpheus is just a sweet himbo looking for a companion to take care of, and he finds that in Rhea. It's the first book in a 7-book series, and each one they're long too. They're beefy books, but they're worth it. Thanks, Michelle.
Not everybody got to hear that one. As she said, beefy book. I said just like Orpheus, I would assume.
Yes, 100%. So it's the first book in a 7-book series, and each one dives deeper into the world and its politics. We get a little world building in this one, but it's mostly on character development and relationship building, which is my cup of tea when it comes to a romance. Rhea comes back to life after being blamed for her family's murder, and then when she's isolated for 20 years, and her growth throughout the novel is really beautiful to watch. So if you read spicy, dark romances or love Beauty and the Beast, same, and you want to try out something new, A Soul to Keep by Opal Rain is the perfect book for that. Shout out to Emily again for introducing me to monster romances. I think she has single-handedly changed my reading life with this one book. For my next book, I want you to visualize with me, okay? Picture this. It's a chilly November night. It's raining. You're sitting on the couch with a hot cup of tea. You have an autumnal candle burning. This is the perfect atmosphere for reading The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. The Historian follows 3 different timelines of historians looking for the truth about Dracula. We have Professor Rossi, Paul, and our unnamed narrator who happens to be Paul's daughter. They each find a medieval book with an illustrated dragon in the middle of it and nothing else. With piqued curiosity, each of them starts their respective journeys at the library, of course, looking for answers. It leads them down a very dark and dangerous path that ties back to the 15th century and Vlad the Impaler, aka Vlad Dracula. The mystery takes them all over Europe to old monasteries, castles, and lots of libraries, which was obviously my favorite part. It feels like as soon as one question is answered, 3 more pop up. Scholars helping the historians die mysteriously. Documents vanish out of thin air, and some people they encounter have 2 bloody scabs on their neck. Is that a coincidence or proof that Dracula is still alive and he has followers? A lot of chapters end on a cliffhanger and then switch to a different historian's point of view. So the author is constantly building this simmering anticipation and leaves you curious enough to turn the next page late into the night. If you're feeling brave enough, if not, maybe grab some garlic just in case if you're a little superstitious. The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova is for the dark academia Twilight girlies, hence the t-shirt today, and any historical fiction readers who really, really want to learn something. The author spent 10 years researching and writing this book, so be prepared to feel immersed in the intricacies of vampire mythology and folklore. My next pick is a classic, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. If you remember me from other book bashes, I always talk about a classic because I am a diehard English major and I want more people to enjoy them. It's easy to feel intimidated by them. There's still books that I think, I can't read that. I'm not smart enough for it, which is just not true. But I found the best way to fight the classic book fear is to talk about them with other people. So luckily, we have The Bluest Eye available in a book club bag. The Bluest Eye is an easy classic to read in terms of language. It's very accessible, very easy to understand, but the content of the book is really, really hard to digest. Toni Morrison's writing is really poetic. It's emotional. It's extremely highlightable, if you get what I'm saying. Like, I can't tell you how many pages I tabbed on my personal copy at home. But it's a devastating story about Pecola Breedlove, a young Black girl who is abused by her family and rejected by society. In 1941, Pecola goes to live with the McTeer family in Lorain, Ohio, after her father burns down the storefront they called home. Claudia and Frida McTeer are around the same age as Pecola, and they like her, but they also feel really bad for her in her current circumstances. The narrator tells us the history of the Breedlove family through flashbacks and recounts the abuse and neglect Pecola has endured, the worst of all being raped by her own father, and her own mother doesn't even believe her. Keep in mind, she is 11 years old at the time. People in town mock her because she's ugly, because of her home life, because she's Black. She believes that if only she had blue eyes, if only she was pretty like Shirley Temple, she would be loved by everyone and her life would be so much better. According to the American Library Association, in 2023, The Bluest Eye was the 6th most banned book in the United States. And it's been on the ALA's top 100 most banned books list since the 1990s at least, from what I could find. And this book was published in 1970. So it's a story about beauty standards, race, abuse, isolation, love, and the massive impact your family has on you, for better or for worse. The Bluest Eye is Toni Morrison's debut novel, which is honestly offensive that it's that good and it's her debut. But in my professional opinion, it is absolutely deserving of being crowned a classic. And finally, one of my favorite books I read in college, The Talented Mr. Ripley by Patricia Highsmith. In the mid-1950s, Tom Ripley is approached in a bar by a wealthy shipbuilder named Herbert Greenleaf. Herbert is desperate for his son Dickie to leave Italy and come home to work for the family business instead of painting his days away. And thinking Tom and Dickie were friends, Herbert asked Tom to go and convince his son to come home. Tom is a grifter and an extortionist and doesn't actually know Dickie all that well, but like, hey, who's going to say no to an all-expenses-paid trip to Italy? I wouldn't. When Tom finds Dickie, he makes absolutely zero move to convince him to leave and instead ingratiates himself into Dickie's easy, luxurious life. The more time Tom spends with Dickie, the more his obsession grows. He moves into his house. He starts wearing his clothes and slowly and then completely takes on Dickie's identity after murdering him on a boat trip. He meanders around Europe, spending Greenleaf money until the police finally catch up with him, but Tom might just be smart enough to get away with it. There are actually 2 adaptations I really highly recommend that are pretty true to the book. The first is the 1999 movie with Matt Damon and Jude Law. I will watch anything with Jude Law, but this movie is great. And more recently, a Netflix original series this year with Andrew Scott, aka the hot priest from Fleabag, and Johnny Flynn, who is the love interest in Emma, the movie from, I think, 2022, something like that. So yeah, The Talented Mr. Ripley by Patricia Highsmith is so psychologically twisted, but it's very, very quiet about it, if that makes sense. I felt bad for Tom and sympathized with him and thought, oh, I get it. And he's a murderer. He's literally a criminal. And I didn't realize how Patricia Highsmith manipulated me as a reader to feel bad for a murderer until the actual very end of the book. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. You guys might want to switch. Yeah. Rosemary. All right. So while we transition Rosemary into the hot seat, if you will, again, I am so excited to share about some of the events we have planned for the next coming months. Nicole is at our downtown branch, so we're going to start by highlighting 2 of our events that are hosted there. On Saturday, September 21st at 3 p.m., OPL welcomes Bossy Afia, the owner and chief writer of Sensible Studios, to our downtown branch. Bossy will be in conversation with OPL staff about the power of storytelling and diversity in fiction and literature, especially representation in the science fiction and fantasy genres. Afia will share about his work and answer audience questions after the presentation. Also, our amazing downtown branch is hosting a neighborhood scavenger hunt on Sunday, October 20th, starting at 3 p.m. Gather a group of friends or family members to explore the downtown library and neighborhood. Each group will be looking for landmarks in the Omaha downtown area. You'll have 2 hours to see as many of the sites as you can before heading back to the library for a prize. So check out omahalibrary.org and our events page for more details on those programs. And now we welcome Rosemary. You can find her on page 10 in your booklet. Rosemary is a specialist at the Milton R. Abrahams branch, and she enjoys stories with strong female characters and dragons. Her ideal reading setup would be a cozy chair and a cup of tea. She enjoys crochet, writing, and gaming, both video games and board or tabletop games. And every year she sets a reading goal based on her age that she always exceeds. Amazing. Welcome, Rosemary.
I try and do the reading challenge as soon as it comes out too. So like, I know I'm short. Yeah, so I try and do like the reading challenge as soon as it comes out. I try and get it done in like first month. So, all right. So my first pick is One Woman Show by Christine Colson. And it takes place as it's an unconventional novel because it is told through museum wall labels. So if you had an art exhibit about your whole life just told through these labels. So it's a quick read, but it's also very interesting in reading about our main character, Kitty Whitaker, when they talk about from her childhood to like her several different marriages. You see that they move like from the collection of, and then her parents, and then from the collection of her first husband, formerly from the collection of. So it's kind of like a little play on like society's role. Yeah. She is a woman of privilege trying to break free of the mold society has placed on her. And because of the short, succinct prose, we unravel details of Kitty's life from her rough edges to the cracks in her perfect porcelain. And the author actually has been writing for the Met Museum of Art for over 25 years. So she knows how to get to the point. We have this in book format, and for the challenges that it fulfills, we have it features a veteran, which is one of her several husbands that she marries, and features a 20th century icon because she talks a lot with Picasso and Brock. So, and that is One Woman Show by Christine Colson. My next pick is The Ballerina Mindset by Megan Fairchild. How many of you have been watching the Olympics? Yeah, woo! So, I wanted to become a ballerina when I was a kid, and I turned out to be a long distance runner instead. But I found out that both of them contain physical and mental discipline and the ability to make something look easy in a competitive environment. And the author, Megan Fairchild, is a principal ballerina with the NYC Ballet Company. Through her intimate style, she shares wisdom and experience in relatable terms for anyone struggling to thrive in high-pressure scenarios. So it's not just for dancers. It's not just for athletes. Anyone can read this. She has a warm, welcoming vibe and talks about stage fright, imposter syndrome, balancing different facets of life. So this is a good read for anyone who wants to build up some self-confidence or be able to do whatever they want to do without having to worry about, stage fright or making things look easy. We have this in print format, and the challenges that it fulfills, I'm putting it under featuring spirituality because this is like a separate mindset that like it gets your head in the game, and I feel that like centers you and just makes you just reevaluate your life decisions. So that's The Ballerina Mindset by Megan Fairchild. My next book is California Golden by Melanie Benjamin. And if you are fans of Malibu Rising, this is for you. It's a historical fiction story about two sisters growing up in California with a reluctant surfer-turned-mother who defies the 1960s housewife norm. It's very character-driven as we learn about each of the girls and their struggles to learn about themselves. Mindy suffers the ebb and flow of becoming a surfing celebrity, while Ginger finds herself drowning in a world of drugs and cults. This book will make you feel all the feels as you're swept up by all the drama. This is one book I actually threw because I'm just shaking and yelling at Ginger, like, why are you doing this? No, you're better than this. He's not good enough for you. So, the challenges that this fulfills features a veteran because Mindy travels to notable places like Hawaiian beaches and the field hospitals in Vietnam. And the color in the title, because gold is a color. Formats that this fulfills, formats that we have are print, large print, ebook, audiobook, and a book club kit. That is California Golden by Melanie Benjamin. My next one is a graphic novel, Magus of the Library by Mitsu Izumi. I love manga and graphic novels. So this is a fantasy manga that follows the life of Theo, who is a book lover with elf-like ears that ostracize him from using his own village's library. So with a character-driven plot, because the chance encounter with a Kafna in this world, that means it's a librarian of you're a librarian of Abzac, which is like the city of books. So if it's like the capital, it's like the Washington, D.C. of books. With intricate illustrations and lore sprinkled throughout the pages, this transports the reader to a mystical and magical world of books and the importance of literacy. We have volumes 1 through 7 in our collection, and this fulfills the challenges of featuring social justice, featuring a refugee immigrant, featuring mythology, because you learn about some of the different tribes that are coming into this city and what their belief is, and featuring also spirituality. That is the Magus of the Library. My last book is True Biz by Sarah Novick. And yeah, it's a really good one. It's a coming-of-age novel that follows the students at River Valley School for the Deaf. We follow Charlie, who is a transfer student with a rebellious streak and has a cochlear implant as she navigates the new signing world around her, because her mother believed that with a cochlear implant, you don't need to learn how to sign. So when she enters this school, she does not know how to do any ASL. And then there's, on the other hand, Austin, who is the school's best boy. His whole family's been deaf. They've always gone to this school. And now he has a new baby sister that might be hearing. So February is the head mistress, and she's fighting to keep the school open as well as keep her marriage. So this is considered an own voices story, as the author is deaf, and helps others discover the true biz, which is like the true business, the real deep down truth, no sugarcoating, controversies of the deaf community. The formats we have are print, large print, ebook, audiobook, and book club kit. And if you do listen to the audiobook, you could actually hear them signing, which is, I could not believe that you can hear that makes that much noise. It's really interesting to hear. Because again, most of the book takes place through ASL. Challenges that this fulfills is features a person with a disability and features social justice. And that is True Biz by Sarah Novick.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. Let's hear it for Rosemary. Oh, watch out. It swings. Might want to hold it while you stand up. Yeah, it's not going to stay. All right. Well, they switch again. Some more events for you to add to your calendar. Many of our branches are hosting writers workshops this quarter. So check out the calendar to find a time and a branch that works for you. And come join a member of the Nebraska Writers Collective as they lead a workshop on how to write microfiction. And we are so excited to start OPL's version of a silent book club. Join us the second Thursday of the month to read with fellow book lovers for a silent reading party. We'll pop around town to different locations for this non-traditional book club. It's BYOB, bring your own book, and read in silence with others and then socialize or not after. All right. And with that, we're going to meet Sophia. Yeah. Sophia starts on page 12 in your booklet. Sophia is a specialist at the Willa Cather branch, and she enjoys stories that are fairy tale retellings, particularly obscure fairy tales or ones with a unique premise. When she's not at the library, she enjoys spending time with her friends, family, and cat named Louise, and she is currently attending UNO pursuing a bachelor's degree in library science. When she was 10, she checked out 26 books all at once. They were all Dear America or Royal Diaries books, and her intent was to read them all in chronological order based on the time period of the book. She carried them home in 2 bags and that she brought herself to the library. We love a reusable bag. And she finished every single one. So, all right. And this is Sophia's debut at Book Bash. So let's give her another warm welcome.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. I completely forgot I said that. All right. My first book is Allow Me to Introduce Myself by Onyi Nwabaneli. It's about Anuri, the Nigerian-British stepchild of a white mommy blogger, sues said stepmother for the removal of all her images from her various social media sites at the beginning of this novel. As the story unfolds, we begin to learn about Anuri, her alcoholism, her support system of her friends, therapist, and lawyer, and her relationship with her parents, maternal grandparents, and little sister Noelle, who is the new star of her stepmother's social media. What initially drew me to this book was the concept. We are living in the age of mommy vloggers, and some of those children are beginning to grow up and share stories similar to Anuri's, of the anguish wrought on them via the commodification of their childhood. One of the things that made me stay was the many important relationships Anuri has with her lawyer, friends, and maternal grandparents. The story has multiple points of view, so we hear from almost every named character save the therapist and little sister. Something I find to be an incredibly important part of the storytelling, keeping the therapist neutral and still safe for Anuri. We as readers watch Anuri through her life, through her eyes, her grandparents' eyes, her stepmother's, her father's, and the world's. No one is painted as a complete villain in this story. We are given the ability to empathize with the antagonists. This book is tender in every aspect. From the intimacy of Anuri's struggles with alcoholism and making choices for herself, to the way characters describe one another from their point of view. In particular, the way Anuri's friends thought about her left me breathless. Because there's so much love in there, and it is beautiful to read. I love this book. I read it in one day. I had actually started reading it before work, and then I brought it with me to work to read on my break, which I never do. And then I finished it when I got home. I was just so enamored with it. It is a deeply tender and utterly unapologetic book that explores the consequences of building a brand around a child and what happens when they no longer want to play the part. This book fits in the Omaha Reads Challenges to read a book about immigrants, about social justice, and about technology and culture. And that was Allow Me to Introduce Myself by Onyi Nwabaneli, which is available as a physical copy.
If anybody wants to go to their Libby app and put that as a notify me for the downloadable audiobook, I've been waiting for very long for it. So, yeah.
And the next book I'll be talking about is A Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Le Cirque des Rêves, the Circus of Dreams, appears mysteriously. No one knows how or when it will arrive. It stays for no more than a week, then is gone. No one knows how or where to. The circus itself is a thing of magic, created by and beholden to 2 magicians trapped in a game for which they know no rules and have no clue how to win. They simply know they must compete. Over the course of the 16 years the main story follows, our magicians fall in love, making the game to which they are bound as children all that more difficult to read. This is a very atmospheric and richly detailed story. The storytelling and timeline are very fluid, and at a certain point, we can begin to go back and forth between the present and the past. Watching the circus grow and getting a glimpse of what it becomes. Every setting is described in such detail that the reader is transported to each extravagant and whimsical setting our characters are in. While the romance is beautiful and tragic to read, the real focus of this book is the circus itself. From the wonder of an entire circus in black and white, down to the fire pit and concessions, to the various characters who either created it or perform in it, the circus is at the heart of this book. This book is genuinely hard to describe, and it's honestly best to go in knowing as little as possible. So if you like fantasy and richly detailed writing, this is a great book to read. I actually ended up buying this book halfway through reading it. This is the only one of these I own because I didn't finish it in time and I had to return it. And I wasn't going to wait several months. So I knew I had to finish it as soon as possible to maintain the very mystical atmosphere you get reading this. And this book fits into the Omaha Reads Challenge to read a book featuring spirituality. And that was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, which is available as a regular print physical copy, book club kit, ebook, CD, audiobook, and downloadable audiobook. And then the next book I will be talking about is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone. Two agents on opposite sides of a time war, known only as Red and Blue, send each other increasingly elaborate messages through which they fall in love. Told through each woman's perspective and their letters, this book imagines many fascinating worlds the characters slip in and out of. They are never once given a proper appearance, simply known as Red and Blue, both agents for equally insidious organizations. Blue for the garden and red for the agency. What initially drew me to this book was the concept itself. The idea of falling in love through letters is a classic romantic trope, and having it in a sci-fi setting was very intriguing to me. The mediums used for the letters were increasingly fascinating and elaborate. The letters cannot be saved, so they each commit them to memory, their words of devotion to one another immortalized only in their minds. Each of the worlds they slip in and out of are fleeting and richly described, making them feel real despite their short presence in the narrative. As someone who generally dislikes time travel as a trope or plot device, I absolutely adored this. I read the whole thing in one sitting, which is probably the best way to read it. And through the last third or fourth of the book, I was just sobbing the whole time, just crying in my room. My cat was staring at me like I was crazy because of how intensely emotional it made me, which is impressive because this book is less than 200 pages. So it's a quick read. And that was This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone, which is available as a physical copy, ebook, CD, audiobook, and downloadable audiobook. And then the next book is The Ladies Rewrite the Rules by Suzanne L. Lane. This is a Regency romance that follows a wealthy widow, Diana, and other wealthy heiresses and widows after their names are put on a registry for second sons to be able to find wealthy wives. When Diana goes to confront the author of the list, Maxwell, she cannot help but find him attractive and interesting. The ladies listed band together and end up deciding that they will rewrite the rules of society, as they are now the ones with the power due to their wealth. I was initially drawn to this book because it sounded like a fun Regency romance and had a unique concept. It was a very lighthearted read, save for a few scenes about past events, and had multiple romances that were sweet, charming, and full of heart. Alongside being a Regency romance, this book is about women gaining agency in a time where, despite their status, women had little in the way of such agency because of money and societal norms. The bond that forms between these women is incredibly touching and makes their happy endings all the more precious. Despite some of the more serious moments, this book is incredibly lighthearted and an easy read, a true rom-com in my opinion. The story is full of happy endings, and the entire plot is tied up in a beautiful bow at the very end. This book is under 200 pages, and that was The Ladies Rewrite the Rules by Suzanne L. Lane, which is available as a physical copy and ebook. And the next book I'll be speaking about is Ring Shout, or Hunting Ku Kluxes in the End Times by P. the Jelly Clark. In an alternate version of America where D.W. Griffith was a sorcerer who cast a spell with the movie The Birth of a Nation, Maurice Boudreau and her fellow back resistance fighters spend their days hunting Ku Kluxes. Once clan members that became infected and turned into creatures with six eyes, long white limbs, and a taste for dog, whose monstrous forms can only be seen by a few gifted people. As the story begins, something is brewing in Macon, something powerful. My initial interest in this book came from the concept itself. An alternate history where magic simmers under the surface and monsters of many kinds exist. The stitching of magic into this part of American history is done so masterfully that it feels like it might have happened. That is what makes this book so good, and anything Peter Jelly Clark writes, is that it feels entirely plausible. Rage and hatred are strong themes in this story, as hatred is what drives the clan and is what the creatures that have joined their ranks feed on. And a more righteous rage is what, in part, drives Maurice and her companions. What I loved was that the rage these Black characters feel in the face of this hatred isn't discounted or treated as bad. The narrative understands that their anger and rage is different than the hatred the clan feels. The action and imagery are tense and poignant as well as graphic. This book stayed with me long after I finished it. I could not stop thinking about the cleverness of the concept and how much world building and plot the author was able to cram into less than 200 pages without it feeling cramped or forced. As someone who isn't a huge fan of horror, this book worked really well for me because despite some of the graphic scenes and body horror, the true horror of this book was hatred and what it drives some people to do. This book is also under 200 pages. And this book fits into the Omaha Reads challenges to read a book featuring spirituality and read a book featuring a veteran. And that was Ring Shout by Peter J. Clark, which we have available as a physical copy.
Great job, Sophia. Thank you. If you guys want to switch. All right. Speaking of like mythology and such, on Thursday, November 7th at 6 p.m., join Omaha Public Library and a panel of experts who will share their culture stories and answer questions about your favorite myths as we explore mythology around the world. Whether explaining the origins of humanity, customs, or natural phenomena, myths have captured the imaginations of cultures for centuries. And do we have any storytellers in the house? No? Yeah, got a few. So this season, we have 3 story slams that are coming up. So come join OPL for a fun, loose, mildly competitive storytelling event for adults. We are looking for storytellers to share a 5 to 8 minute story fitting the event's theme. We also need audience members to cheer on our storytellers, and judges will be chosen from the audience and prizes will be awarded. The storytellers are encouraged to sign up ahead of time, so check the individual events on the website for more details. And with that, I'm so excited to introduce our last bookteller before intermission, Rose.
I'm the one on the left in the picture.
Oh, okay. Yes, she's the one on the left in the picture. Yes.
I truly never noticed he was in the picture.
Did you not? Oh, yeah. I thought that you did that on purpose. Rose in your booklet is on page 8. Rose is a specialist at the Willa Cather branch. She enjoyed reading about the American Civil War and describes her ideal reading setup as simple, just a chair and a working lamp. Her first library was the Carnegie Library in Fort Dodge, Iowa, which featured a beautiful marble entryway. She would bet it all in the Final Jeopardy category was old movies, and she is the proud owner of 10 pairs of all-bird shoes. Welcome, Rose.
Thank you. Can you hear me? My first book is Late Bloomers by Deepa Varadarajan. This is a charming and engaging debut novel of late life romance. Suresh and Lata, who live in Austin, Texas, have recently divorced after 36 years of an arranged marriage. Suresh was astounded and aggrieved that Lata was unhappy and unfulfilled, and he's having trouble adjusting to his loneliness. As a result, he's trying his luck with online dating sites. That has not always gone well for him. Meanwhile, Lata, who works in a small academic library, finds herself bewildered at being courted by an elderly college professor. Their 2 adult children look on with a mixture of bemusement, amusement, exasperation, stupefaction, and even anger as their parents remake their lives. Everyone is forced to rethink their ideas about duty and responsibility, morality and family, culture and connection. All the characters in this story, including the supporting players, are presented sympathetically, and each person charms us in their own way as we follow along to the end. I'm looking forward to reading more from this very promising author. This is available from us as a print book and as a downloadable audiobook. Next, Point Zero by Seiichi Matsumoto. This was originally published in 1959 and it was just published this year in an English translation. Seiichi Matsumoto was the great mystery writer of Japan. He brought the modern mystery story to Japan and was one of their best-selling and highest-paid authors. And even though he died in 1992, his books still sell in the thousands. He is particularly skilled at bringing alive the atmosphere of Japan's post-war experience. And that leads us to Point Zero, set just 13 years after the end of World War II. In 1958, in a match arranged by a go-between, a young woman named Teiko marries Kenichi, an advertising man 10 years older than she is. Everything seems satisfactory as they begin their life together in Tokyo, but after just a few days, Kenichi leaves on a business trip to a city called Kanazawa, and then he just vanishes. He never returns from his trip. She travels to Kanazawa with one of her husband's work colleagues to search for him, and her brother-in-law comes with her. She begins to realize just how little she knows about her husband's life and profession in the immediate post-war years, especially any connection he may have had to the so-called Pan girls, women who fraternized with American GIs during the occupation. Now, I don't want to say too much more about Teiko's search for her husband and where the clues lead, because I don't want to ruin it for you. The perfection of the author's way of setting up a scene and delivering the story is mesmerizing and top-notch. He sketches quite beautifully what life in Japan was like in those first post-war years as the country reckoned with its past and its recent defeat. This is available in regular print. Third, Brother, Do You Love Me? By Manny Coe and Ruben Coe. Manny Coe was 10 years old when his youngest brother, Ruben, was born. Ruben was a different child. He had Down syndrome, but he was not so different that he was not included in the lives and activities of Manny and his other two brothers. They played together, they looked out for each other. They were a close and loving family group. Ruben always expressed himself through drawing and painting. Manny and Ruben traveled abroad together and had many adventures. But as the years passed and Manny and their other brothers went out into the world to make their own lives, their aging parents realized that they could no longer offer the care and support that Ruben needed. And so Ruben went to live in a care home. It was there, faced with the loss of his home, trying to adjust to new routines, new faces, new ways of interacting with the world, and most of all, unable to cope with the terrible isolation of the COVID pandemic, Ruben withdrew into himself. He became nonverbal, he stopped eating, he became unable to perform daily hygiene activities, but despite his isolation, he still communicated with Manny through texts. Manny, living with his partner Jack on a farm in Spain, in November 2020, received a text from Ruben. All it says is, "Brother, do you love me?" That's all. And Manny does indeed love his brother, and he sets out to prove it to him. Manny returns to England, removes Ruben from the care home, and takes him to a cottage on the south coast of England. And there, Ruben begins to regain his selfhood. Their story of what happened then is detailed in this incredibly moving book, illustrated with Ruben's own artwork. I brought the book with me this evening so I could hold it up and show you some of Ruben's artwork. Whoops. Love will always find a way, brother, is what this painting says. Thank you. I loved Ruben and I loved Manny. I think you will too. If you're doing the reading challenge, this fulfills the category, read a book by or about a person with a disability. Next up, The Cemetery of Untold Stories by Julia Alvarez. I have loved Julia Alvarez for over 30 years, going back to when I first read How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents and In the Time of the Butterflies. The Cemetery of Untold Stories is her brand new novel, and she has lost none of her magic. Alma has had plots and stories and characters running around her mind for almost her whole life. Some of them were realized in her finished works, but others, alas, were not. When she inherits some land in her native Dominican Republic, she decides to create a cemetery where these lost, unfulfilled creations of hers can rest in peace. And so can she, because after she dies, she does not want them found among her papers, dragged out, and published. So she actually buries the unfinished drafts and manuscripts. However, the characters themselves in those drafts and manuscripts have other ideas. They're very much alive and they are determined to tell their own stories. They resent Alma's attempt to erase them. Some of them are based on real people whose stories were buried and forgotten, and they refuse to be buried and forgotten a second time. With the help of Philomena, the cemetery's caretaker, the characters speak, argue, talk about Alma behind her back, and they thoroughly engage your heart as you read. This book is truly the jewel in the crown of an author who is at the height of her storytelling powers. If you have not encountered Julia Alvarez before, I cannot recommend this book highly enough. It would make a great choice for your next book club. And lucky for you, OPL owns this title as a book club kit. It is also available in regular print, large print, as an ebook, and a downloadable audiobook. Last, we have Service Model by Adrian Tchaikovsky, just published this year. Charles is a robot, a service model. If you look closely at the picture on the cover of the book, you can see that Charles is holding a teapot. He has been programmed to serve as a valet to his master and to fulfill all of his needs and requirements. He's performed these duties admirably for thousands of days, but one day something goes wrong with Charles's programming and he murders his master. Left without a primary purpose, Charles runs away. He becomes un-Charles and goes out into the world to find his purpose and to become self-aware. I was always fascinated by robots and robot stories and by what would happen if we were gone and all that were left were robots. What will their purpose be then? Like in an old Ray Bradbury story that I read a long time ago called There Will Come Soft Rains. That story, written during the height of the Cold War, described a different kind of human doom than the one laid out in Service Model, but it is a doom nonetheless. The author is able to portray Charles's personality so well and so sympathetically that despite yourself, you are drawn into caring about him and anxious to know what will become of him. I did care for Charles, even though I knew he was just a robot. Is that what makes us human? That I can care about a robot and its fate. If so, can a robot then in turn attain something beyond itself? Is there hope amid apocalyptic decay? Those are just a few of the questions you might find yourself asking when you read this very creative and well done piece of science fiction. Service Model is available from us in regular print and as an ebook. And that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Rose.
Stop in my branch. I'll find you something to read.
All right, and our final commercial break before intermission. Who loves an escape room? Any escape room fans? Okay, so OPL has created a one-of-a-kind escape room using historical documents and fictional Omahans. You will be locked in a room, and in order to escape in time, you will need to solve various Omaha history-related puzzles and clues before your time is up. Check out the online calendar for more information and registration. And two branches are hosting our unique ancestral tarot program. Tarot cards were first introduced as playing cards in Europe as early as the 15th century and have since been used for divination or the practice of fortune telling. This program takes a lighthearted approach to using tarot cards as a means for connecting with your ancestors. Learn what an ancestral tarot spread is and how to identify and decipher birth cards for yourself and your ancestors. Again, all of our event information is at omahalibrary.org, so check that out for more information. And we have made it halfway. So before we roll into our intermission, a friendly reminder for our in-person attendees, submit your ticket to the basket. And for our virtual friends, please complete the online survey for your prizes. Be sure to stop by the bar or the bookworm table, and our gender-neutral bathrooms are out that room and down the hallway, and the other women's restrooms are out this way. So, yeah, we'll see you in 10. Oh, no, I know. about Omaha Reads this year. Omaha Reads is a yearly event that celebrates the power of literature by bringing the community together to read and explore the themes of one book. The book is selected through a public vote, and book nominations are accepted on a continual basis and may be submitted at any time on the OPL website. Our 2024 Omaha Reads is The War Begins in Paris by Theodore Wheeler. Yeah. We have a few programs to celebrate this book and bring the community together. First, we are thrilled to host a conversation with Theodore Wheeler, the author of this book, followed by a Q&A session with the audience. Copies of the book will be available for purchase and signing, and registration is required for this event, which is October 27th, 3 p.m. at our downtown branch. We are also going to have on Saturday, September 28th at 1 p.m., embark on a walking tour of Paris from the comfort of W. Clark Swanson branch. From Paris, our tour guide will lead us through a virtual presentation about key sites in the city. Light snacks and refreshments will be provided. Registration is also required for this event. On Sunday, August 25th at 2 p.m. at our Millard branch, join Omaha Public Library for a discussion on the themes of The War Begins in Paris, including women in journalism and their roles during World War II. And you might have seen on your way in that we are doing a tiny art program. So grab a kit and create a tiny piece of art centered around the themes of our 2024 Omaha Reads book. We have some kits here tonight, and otherwise they are available at any of our OPL locations, and then return them by September 15th to an OPL branch. And the art pieces will be on display at our Omaha Reads events. Okay, are you ready for some more books? This is David. David starts on page 4. All right. So David is a specialist at the Benson branch. He enjoys stories featuring blood and guts. He's been known to throw things at previous book bashes, all by accident, I'm sure. And he enjoys listening to, playing, and writing music on analog synthesizers. He sings in a post-punk band called The Illiterates, and his reading hot take is that he believes if you aren't reading short stories, you don't know what's new and interesting in a particular genre. Welcome, David.
Hello. I'm going to start things off here with what I think is my favorite book of 2024 so far. Probably will be my favorite book at the end of the year, but we'll see. This is Cuckoo by Gretchen Felker Martin. You know me if you've been to some of the previous book bashes. I really like incredibly violent horror books, and it takes a lot to scare me. I can't remember the last time I was really scared by a book. Cuckoo scared me quite a bit. It set me on edge. I had the kind of adrenaline rush, felt like the fight or flight nervousness while reading it, had to stop reading it before bed, that type of thing. It also has all the content warnings, so if you aren't ready for extreme content, this is definitely within the whole splatterpunk oeuvre. It's about a bunch of queer kids who are kidnapped and told it's for their own good and taken to a conversion therapy camp. And there is something within the camp that's even more sinister than the counselors. There's something that is seeking to replace them and wear their skin. It's about the group and how they must band together for survival and bond together through trauma. Not all of them make it, though. They have to come together as adults after time has passed and clean up the mess and face their own pasts. It's has a lot of heart and anger to it, like a good punk rock song. Gretchen Felker Martin is named to keep an eye out for. Her previous book was Manhunt, which was really widely celebrated, and this one, I think, topped even that. If you really want to read some good horror, you should keep her name in mind. Thematically through it, there's a lot of found family and coping with trauma. And there are some similarities to Stephen King's It and John Carpenter's classic movie, The Thing, but it really goes its own way with these influences and tells its own story, but I would definitely recommend it to fans of both. You can read it for the Reading Challenge as a book about social justice, a book about LGBTQ families, a book mentioned on the Book Drop podcast, and a book about spirituality. And we have it available in print, ebook, and downloadable audiobook. And this is Cuckoo by Gretchen Felker Martin. Next up, we have The Dreadful History and Judgment of God on Thomas Münster, The Life and Times of an Early German Revolutionary by Andrew Drummond. Drummond is a historian, but he's also a novelist and a translator. So he knows how to take all the hard facts and make an approachable book. It reads like history, not like a novel, though. So this is one for the nonfiction readers. Münster feels like a real person, and you want to root for him, even though you know from the beginning that he doesn't have a good end. Drummond translated all the German sources for this himself. Reading the book was really cool for me. It made me want to get a T-shirt printed with Münster on it in the style of Che Guevara. So it's an inspirational, revolutionary book. It was equal parts hopeful and disheartening to see a historical figure who wanted to make the world a better place and who was killed for it. Common story you see a lot through history. There are sparse details on his early life just because they're not available on the record. So it was really cool to see him kind of emerge fully formed as a firebrand, making good trouble. And I loved how he was willing to stand up to injustice and be confrontational. And this book looks at the material conditions of the German peasant during the transition period between feudalism and modernity, which led to the German Peasant Wars 500 years ago. It kind of came out for the anniversary. And it contrasts Münster a lot with Martin Luther. Luther liked to call Münster the devil, and they did not get along. You can see kind of the more radical and moderate forces pushing them in history. And Münster had some more radical ideas about the liberation of the poor and the communal ownership of good. Münster specifically called the exploitation of peasants and workers by the nobility theft. And he said, if these words make me a rabble rouser, then so be it. The book argues that although he did not achieve much, he saw beyond the present and aimed for the future. This is a book that you can use for the reading challenge as a book about social justice and a book about spirituality. And we have it available in print. And this is The Dreadful History and Judgment of God on Thomas Münster by Andrew Drummond. Not reading the subtitle the second time. Next up, we have Counterweight by Juna, translated by Anton Herr. This is another book with an eyeball on the cover. This isn't a horror like the one I had last year, but there's going to be eyeballs. Author is an anonymous and celebrated South Korean writer, and this is their first book translated into English. It is set in the near future where a South Korean mega corporation has colonized a fictional island, much to the protestations of the natives, to build an elevator into space. Something eerie makes it seem like a former president who is now dead, president of the corporation, is somehow calling the shots from beyond the grave. This is cyberpunk with all that entails. There's brain chips that can be hacked, corporate malfeasance, problems that haven't been fixed, and just everything set up so that the people who are comfortable enough can ignore society's problems. One part that hit really hard for me was AI had taken over municipal planning, and that just means that trash is dumped in the alley in poor neighborhoods, and it was really just efficient at getting it out of rich people's sight. There's a lot of themes in this: colonialism, extraction, capitalism, the fetishization of technology, corporate overreach and surveillance. But it's also a fast-paced thriller that is not very long and a lot of fun to read. The nature of the hackable brain chips are called worms, and so literally about brain worms, and it also adds a good sense of paranoia that is always great in a cyberpunk thriller about surveillance. This is a good addition to the cyberpunk canon, so you can put it right up on your bookshelf with Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, Narrowmancer, and Snow Crash. It's good for the reading challenge for a book on tech and culture and social justice. We have it in OPL at print, and this is Counterweight by Juna. Next up, we have the Fafford and the Grey Mouser Omnibus by Fritz Lieber, Mike Mignola, and Howard Chaykin, among others. There are two Fritz Liebers, in my opinion. There's the serious horror writer who writes big issues about society. Then there's the fun sword and sorcery writer. This is the sword and sorcery writer version. The characters were based off of Leiber and one of his friends, and you can really feel like the close friendship between the two characters, and that's what makes it fun. This is the graphic novel adaptation. The short stories that they're based on are also a lot of fun to seek out if you want to. It is more personal stories of people stealing things and getting away with a lot rather than epic world-shattering events, which is how I prefer my fantasy, honestly. it feels like reading a high-level D&D game to some degree, because this was a pretty big influence on the people who created D&D. And so you have like these characters who feel like they are ridiculous D&D characters with weird little level dips, so that, oh yeah, no, my barbarian's also a bard. I can do that. Feels a lot like that. The iconic setting is Lankmar, which is a cosmopolitan yet corrupt major metropolis, which has inspired large fantasy cities that followed. If you're a Terry Pratchett fan, this is what he based his city off of. And Mike Mignola's favorite work, pre-Hellboy work. He illustrated these for Epic Comics in 1990 with scripts by Howard Chaykin. And Mignola really does a great job at conveying the same frantic joy of the action sequences that Leiber wrote down. Both are worth reading, kind of seeing side by side. And these are adaptations of the best and best known of the original stories, like Ilmet and Linkmar, The Howling Tower, and Bazaar of the Bazaar. As a bonus, it contains the DC adaptations from the 70s, which aren't as good as the Mignola ones, but they're still fun to have in there. And for the reading challenge, it's a book about a refugee or immigrant, a book about mythology, color in the title, The Gray Mouser, 20th century icon, because Fritz Leiber was an amazing and prolific writer, and he fought in World War II, so veteran counts there. We have it available in print, and this is The Fafford and the Gray Mouser Omnibus by Fritz Leiber and Mike Mignola. Finally, we have Doppelganger, A Trip to the Mirror World by Naomi Klein. I was still on Twitter and hadn't rage quit it when a lot of what inspired this book was coming about. And I was kind of in the circles and saw these events. Naomi Klein often would get confused for Naomi Wolf. They are both kind of known for writing in like the late 90s, early aughts, some big idea books that are about political ideas. Klein was more about systemic things. Wolf was more individual. But if you haven't read either of their books, you can kind of see how people can make the confusion there. Wolf fell down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole with the pandemic, so the confusion started to have more of a negative effect on Klein. In fact, I remember seeing floating around Twitter a little poem: "If the Naomi be Klein, you're doing just fine. If the Naomi be Wolf, oh buddy, oof." This poem is directly referenced in the book, by the way. The mix-ups mostly happened on Twitter, but they started to get in person. That caused a lot more problems for Klein. It's structured more like a narrative than Klein's previous books, like No Logo and Shock Doctrine, which were structured more like presenting an academic argument. It talks a lot about the importance of looking at a dark reflection of yourself to recognize the things that you've been ignoring that you need to confront. But it also looks that, when you're doing this kind of thing too closely, it can become unhealthy. It had some really insightful things to say about conspiracy theories and why people are drawn into them. Looks at like pipelines and the combination of hustle culture and hyper-individualism that can lead to that. And then it also looks at the difference between healthy skepticism of power versus unfounded speculation. One quote near the end that I loved is Klein was talking about how conspiracy theories get the facts wrong, but often get the feelings right. The feeling that every human misery is someone else's profit, of being exhausted by predation and extraction, and the feeling that important truths are being hidden. And it grapples with the despair of thinking things could be getting better and then having the rug pulled out from under you, which is something I related to quite a bit. It put into the words a lot of the ideas that have been bouncing around my head for the last couple of years, so I think it's great for a book club discussion. Speaking of which, we have it available in print, large print, ebook, downloadable audiobook, and in a book club bag. So you can start that book club with our resources, and you can use it for the reading challenge for a book about tech and culture, social justice, a book mentioned on the Book Drop podcast, a book about disability. There is a good chapter on some of the conspiracy theories relating to that have some kind of ableist connotations to it. And then it is about a 20th century icon. Klein's career really kind of started in the 21st century, although her work started in the 20th, but Wolf's big books kind of came out in the 90s. So you got the 20th century icon right there. And this is Doppelganger by Naomi Klein.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Sorry. David's own Olympic sport of how far the note cards can go. All right. Summer, you can come on over. All right. 2 other events for you. We have partnered with the United States Post called Province Office. Thank you so much. don't know if you guys could hear the shout behind me, but anyways, so we have 2 patents and a great idea, which is an interactive workshop. You'll flex your creativity with a group to invent a new idea from 2 existing patents, brand it, and pitch it. Learn about intellectual property, the patent process, and how to protect your own intellectual property. And in Patents and Entrepreneurs, a USPTO patent examiner will introduce the different types of intellectual property, including patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. In addition, local entrepreneurs will share their stories. So the dates are up there, but of course, go to omahalibrary.org for more information on these events. And with that, we're going to welcome Summer. Summer starts on page 14 in your booklet. Summer is a specialist at the Benson branch. She gravitates towards stories with found family, and her childhood branch was the branch where she currently works. She has fond memories of the librarian letting her scan her own books in the days before self-checkout. What were those like? When she's not at the library, she enjoys traveling, gardening, and deliciously horrible Bravo TV shows. Lastly, a fun fact about Summer is that she is distantly related to ritualistic cannibals. Maybe there's a book in her future for David to read, and just David. No, just kidding. All right, Summer, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Well, I don't know about y'all, but when I get to this time of year, I am so ready for fall and to and to cuddle in with a good book. And what better choice than a cozy paranormal romance like Ashley Poston's The Dead Romantics. Florence Day doesn't believe in love or happily ever afters any longer. Unfortunately, she's also the ghostwriter for a prominent romance novelist and is trying to finish her book. The deadline is approaching, but her new editor, Benji Andor, isn't allowing any leeway. Florence can also see ghosts, an ability that contributed to the devastating end of her previous relationship. On the eve of her deadline, Florence finds her life upended by the sudden death of her beloved father. As Florence returns home, she holds out hope that her father's ghost will appear for one last goodbye. She's shocked, however, when the spirit that visits her isn't her father, but Benji Andor, mysteriously dead only a day after she'd met him. Now, Florence must not only navigate her grief, she must also contend with Benji's confused ghost following her around. This is an unputdownable romance that is also about family and death, reconciliation, and creativity. Poston manages to both affirm the cynics and give hope to the romantics by both embracing and subverting rom-com tropes. The sparkling dialogue makes the characters come alive, even the dead ones. What makes this book so special is that it's one of the most honest and beautifully written depictions of grief I've ever seen. Poston has an incredible ability to bring light and kindness and hope to grief. This book was written for the burnt-out older siblings, and if Mirrorball by Taylor Swift speaks to you on a cellular level, I highly recommend you pick up this book. The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston is available in print, ebook, and as a book club bag. Prepare yourself for a captivating tale of meet-cutes, humorous misunderstandings, and heartwarming reconciliations between a boy with a touch of the ghostly and a girl who coexists with spirits. One thing y'all need to know about me is that I love to sleep. In an ideal world, I would nap every day. But what I never knew was that reclaiming that time for myself could be a powerful act of resistance. This is what Tricia Hersey, author of Rest is Resistance, claims in her powerful debut work. She argues that rest is a political act and suggests that capitalism and white supremacy have corrupted our relationship with relaxation, especially for Black Americans whose bodies have been a constant source of exploitation. Hersey describes how in her belief, she believes in liberatory power of rest stemmed from her exhaustion while in seminary school, and her church's message that her body is a deep reflection of God, worthy of cherishing. Resting is about beginning the process of undoing trauma so that we can thrive and evolve back to our natural state, a state of ease and rest. Rest is Resistance, the book that reminds us that we are worthy of rest, of self-care, of prioritizing ourselves, even when society tells us otherwise. While the book is certainly about the importance of rest, it's also about a broader context of unlearning grind culture and standards of urgency and productivity. It's about resisting white supremacist and capitalist lies in all forms, the portal of rest, reminding ourselves that we don't need to strive because we already have everything we need. Her work is full of calls to action, prompts, and reflections for the curious reader. Hersey's inspirations run the gamut from Octavia Butler to the history of Maroons in the American South, while also drawing deeply on the wisdom of her ancestors and her own experiences. I highly recommend this book as a potential frame to help you see your own path outside of service to these deadly systems. The style is healing and poetic, and the conversations it will inspire will surely be life-changing. Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey is available in print and audiobook formats and is a great fit for the reading challenges for books on social justice and spirituality. For readers who love historical romance, fantasy, and cozy mystery, I really must recommend Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. Her delightful first installment in her Regency Fairy series is the perfect blend of all three. This charmingly sweet, low-stakes fantasy romance is truly Pride and Prejudice meets Howl's Moving Castle. After a fairy lord steals her soul, or at least half of it, Theodora is no longer able to feel anything, not regret when her biting humor flays those around her, nor embarrassment when she does something completely scandalous. Believing Dora is cursed, her cousin Vanessa takes her to London to seek the help of the magic-wielding Lord Sorcerer. While there, the cousins are thrust into high society, entering a glittering world of balls, tea parties, and betrothals. As Dora carves an opportunity for herself to work with the Lord Sorcerer, together they discover a mysterious plague targeting the city's poor and vulnerable. You are truly sure to be swept away with this book because there is so much fun to be had. It has the right mix of all your favorite historical romance moments, the balls, the gowns, the matchmaking mamas, the witty repartee between love interests, but it also has a ton of depth, while with a lot to say regarding the trauma of war, and is a surprisingly class-conscious narrative for a genre that tends to romanticize the aristocracy. Atwater does a remarkable job of crafting such an engaging story while remaining decidedly romantic and lighthearted. The romance leaps off the page as the two leads embark on their quest, and they form a bond that is truly genuine and makes the heart yearn. Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater is available in print, ebook, and downloadable audiobook formats. All in all, this is a sweet, charming story with a perfect mix of fantasy and romance that takes readers to a magical world. If you want to get swept away in a thrilling story that is essentially queer, fast, and furious, but make it witchy, I highly recommend you pick up Brooms by Jasmine Walls and Teo Duvall, a historical young adult graphic novel that you won't be able to put down. This is a fascinating alternative history of 1930s Mississippi, where magic is legal for some, illegal for others, and secret broom racing happens nightly in the woods. Sisters Maddie and Emma are drawn to broom racing's potential to help support their family and save themselves. Luella, who was was bound by the government after an incident in the residential school she was forced to attend, is their teacher and guide. Billy May, Luella's sweetheart and captain of the Night Storms, wants to lead the team to victory and raise enough money to head out west. These teammates have a lot at stake just by existing as their authentic selves. But as law enforcement closes in and the biggest race yet looms near, the Night Storms must rely on their community more than ever to hit the big score that could save them all. At the heart of this book is the story of what it feels like to have things taken away from you. Your magic, identity, ability to live your life as your true self while living in a constant state of fear. But it also shows the importance of fighting back and reclaiming your power, of believing in yourself and knowing that no one can ever steal what is rightfully yours. This story actively chooses not to focus on pain and hatred, instead focuses on love, community, and acceptance. Moreover, the artwork is absolutely gorgeous. Each new turn of the page is a succulent feast for the eyes. The illustrations are filled with passion and energy that convey the tension of racing, coupled with the human experience of those fighting to overcome racist laws. Ultimately, Brooms is a profound and thoughtful exploration of what it's like to be a rebellious queer woman of color in the face of adversity, but also a tender and magical story about friendship and community. Brooms by Jasmine Walls and Teo Duvall is available in print and ebook formats and is a great option for the top shelf reading challenge. Lastly, I want to invite you to the mesmerizing world of Ray Bear by Jordan Afueco, the first book in a stunning duology. A beautifully rich young adult Afro fantasy debut that weaves a sweeping tale of loyalty, revenge, and the stinging weight of destiny. Our heroine, 16-year-old Terry Sy, was born to serve the wrath of the Lady, her mother, a purpose ensured by a magical wish. When Terry Sy comes of age, the Lady sends her to Aristar to win a position on the Crown Prince's council, earn his trust, and slay him. Bound by her mother's wish, she must obey the command, though she desperately wants to choose her own path. To earn liberation, Terry Sy embarks on a journey through the realms of Aristar to unearth the details of its sordid history. I cannot rave about Afueco's writing style enough. Her prose is poetic. She whisks you into a lush story that instantly gives one chills with its sweeping fantasy setting, arresting landscapes, and extraordinary magic. A stunning blend of Nigerian folklore with a mix of other influences to create a stunning multicultural world. This book is also perfect for fantasy lovers with its deep, layered world building, tenderly realized characters, a plot that never lags, and an emotionally and thematically vivid narrative. At the heart of the novel is a sharp and thoughtful examination of empire, and how history can both immortalize stories and disappear them. It speaks to many themes that we know all too well, about leadership and the tendency of the powerful to rationalize their own worst ideas, about patriarchy and its seamless continuity with imperialism, and about towering women with towering destinies who get written out of history. These thematic and emotional sketches are made even more compelling with a rich cast of characters. This book is perfect for fans of The Wrath of the Dawn and The Gilded Ones. This simply refreshing novel is teeming with life, love, and color. Ray Bear by Jordan Afueco is available in print, ebook, and downloadable audiobook formats. And once you finish, you'll be running to pick up the sequel. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Summer. Amazing. All right. Our final commercial break, I bring you a QR code so that you can check out our branches host 24 book clubs on a monthly basis. So each day of the week except for Sunday. So if you can follow that QR code to the event list for all of our book clubs and find the best fit for you. Do we have any OPL book clubbers here tonight? Woo! I thought I recognized some faces. Thank you for coming. All right. And with that, we have Angela. Yeah. Our friend Angela starts on page 2. She's our last speaker, but the first in the book. Angela is a librarian in OPL's collection development department. She loves stories featuring cults, weird apocalypses, and retellings. Her ideal reading setup would be a cozy chair when the weather outside isn't ideal, but with the fancy coffee. Her reading hot take is all reading is reading. Children's books, audiobooks, easy reads, it all counts to Angela. Yeah. A fun fact about her is she used to be a flamenco dancer who performed at Renaissance festivals. Lastly, the Jeopardy category that would have her betting it all would be matching a book cover to its genre. That just sounds like a fun game.
I know. We should do it in the Library Olympics.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And so welcome, Angela.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here again. I love telling you about all the books. I wish we could do this every month. So let's start out with what if our beloved Mr. Rogers was steeped in terrible magic and a horrible ending of the show? What if that happened? That's what I felt when I read the description for Mr. Magic. So basically, Mr. Magic by Kirsten White is this book about this kid show where there was all the learning and the wonder and the fabulousness, just like we remember from our childhoods. It was not Mr. Rogers. He's still cool. We still like him. But actually, nobody really remembers who it was. He's like this magical guy, but nobody knows what he looks like. And it was these 6 children, and they would gather around, and there would be like a black cape around them, and nobody knows what happened, that final show, but now there's only 5. So 30 years later, one of the cast members gets an invite to come back for a podcast reunion to be filmed in the deserted old location. Terrible idea, as you can tell from the dripping black of the cover. So she doesn't remember anything. Like, it was a traumatic event. When she went to be part of this show, she came from a very conservative Christian family, and she had some trauma associated with that. And so she feels that she just blocked it all out because of that. When she meets her other friends there, they're like, oh, we're the only ones who know. It was so great, such a great experience. Mr. Magic was so amazing, wasn't he? We loved him so much. He was so good. And she's like, I don't know. Like, she doesn't remember any of it. And all of a sudden, this is what Kirsten White is so good at. That's why I loved Hyde as well. She takes like the things of your childhood that were so happy and wonderful and makes them like totally creepy and horrible. So basically, little by little, you see that the set location where they were is just deserted in the middle of nowhere, and something weird was happening with the children all by themselves, and their parents weren't around, and we don't know what it is. And there's mystery after mystery in this thing, and it's a little surreal. Some of the reviews, people are like, I don't like it because I don't know what's happening, but that's what I love. It's chaos. It's pure chaos. Who is this? Is this magic? Is it real? Is it sci-fi? Is it horror? I don't know. It's for the genreless. So I absolutely love this book. I love that she takes me on all these things. I read a lot of thrillers, so like sometimes I expect it. I did not expect almost anything that happened in this book. I didn't know where it was going to go next. It had a lot of really beautiful metaphors that went back and forth about, like, you know, your experiences meant in the past, or like what it means to identify with people that you're seeing on a screen, et cetera, et cetera. So I highly recommend if you want a fun ride that's a little tinged with like creepiness and I don't know, not a full David book, but poor David. I give it 3 Davids. I give it 3 Davids. Yeah. So it is available as a physical book and a downloadable audiobook. I love listening to it as an audiobook. And it is on OPL's Top Shelf if you want to do that reading challenge. All right. Okay, who here reads nonfiction? Oh, thank goodness. There's so much fiction and I love it, but there's not a lot of nonfiction that we talk about. And this book is amazing. If you love history, and like me, you love the parts of history that we don't talk about in history class, this book is exceptional for you to think about a time. So if you think about World War I, we know a lot about that, right? And if you think about the Great Depression, we know a lot about that. But like, what happened in the middle? There were years in between that. So this book expertly goes into these stories as if you're reading a novel and talks to us about the people who lived during that time when there was so much strife. People were coming back from war, but there was all these ethnic disparities throughout the country. And that's when the labor movement started moving up. And it was brutal. The rights that we have now in like our work came up during this time, and there's literal tar and feathering in this book. There is horror in this history book all over the place. And it was actually kind of brutal to read, but at the same time, I think really important to capture an aspect of history that I really had never heard of outside of the stars, like the Eugene Debs, or, you know, there were several people who were at the time trying to change things. And I've heard of them, but I hadn't heard of the entire movement that went forward. So he gives great context. He's a great storyteller. And so you won't feel like you're reading something that's just telling you dates and stuff. It's telling you reasons. And it really gives you this pathway to where we are now. And wow, how does history repeat itself? I absolutely love this. After this, I ended up reading every other book I could find by this author. He's an exceptional writer. He has great sourcing. He has wonderful background and a ton of stuff that like I just didn't have. And I love reading history. So highly recommend if you want to expand your knowledge of that time. And it has almost every challenge in it. It has a book about a veteran, a refugee, immigrant, social justice, 20th century. You've got everything there, and there's a downloadable audiobook and a physical book. All right. So next is The Seed Keeper. How many of you garden? Okay, some of us. There's a big garden culture here. I had never gardened in my life until I moved here. And I didn't understand like the beauty and the power of what keeping seeds means and how that is such a cultural and important part of who we are. So The Seed Keeper is a fiction book. And it is about a woman who, when she is young, she grows up with her father. And they are Dakota, and he teaches her about saving seeds. He teaches her about the land, about the stars, about what their traditions are. And one day when he goes out to empty the traps, he doesn't come back. And so she's a young girl, and so she's adopted. And after a while, she grows up out of this adopted family. She meets another young girl who's also Native American, and they become great friends. And this girl is like her complete opposite. Her name is Gabby Makespeace, and she is loud and wants to do everything and wants justice. And, you know, our main character is, who's named Rosalie Ironwings. She is kind of quiet and she just wants to keep to herself. So they both make a great pair because they balance each other. So she marries a white man and they have a farm together, and she struggles with him to like keep this farm alive. Chemical companies are coming in and trying to sue them for using their seed patent. I don't know if you've heard of this, but it happens. So there's all this stuff going on with the different dynamics of what it means to grow food for these two cultures that are coming together in this space. It is absolutely epic. And it starts when? It starts after this husband dies and she comes back to the place where she lost her father, and she has to figure out who she is now. After all these years of living between these two cultures, it's so impactful if you think about what it means to grow in a community, what it means to create community, what it means to be part of dual cultures, who we are and how we put who we are into the land that we live in. Absolutely beautiful, deep, profound, spiritual, wonderful book. And it meets the reading challenge of social justice and, for me, spirituality. And it is available as a physical book, downloadable audiobook, and as a book club bag if you want to talk about it with your friends. Okay, so we have another nonfiction here. Pathogenesis, A History of the World in 8 Plagues by Jonathan Kennedy, because we're not sick of hearing about plagues, right? So this book just totally caught my attention. It broke the way I think about things, because he reframes 6,000 years of history without thinking about the victors as the people who won because they're stronger. The people won because they didn't get the diseases. And that's the entire premise of this book. And it is phenomenal because he does a ton of research. He tells you the backgrounds of how this happened, even talking about how on the Mason-Dixie line is also the space where different kinds of mosquitoes don't go. So this is part of how our history divided our country. So this entire space of thinking about how wars were won, how infectious diseases came in, and not on purpose. Like, these certain people were immune and these certain people were not immune, especially after what we lived through a few years ago. To me, it was super impactful to see that this can completely impact communities and cultures and the path to our history and how we move forward. And it really changed kind of the protagonists of colonialism, feudalism, and the spread of religions, because there's a lot more to it than just who got to tell the story. So I love this book. I love the change in focus. Highly recommend. It's available as a downloadable audiobook, an ebook, a physical book, and a book club bag. All right. So this is my last book. And when I read it, I thought of all of you. As I read it, I was like, I need to tell my book club, my book bash friends, because this book just spoke to my soul. And it's the book about Florida you didn't know you needed. You need it. Basically, I moved here from Florida some years ago, and I had a very weird relationship with the state, and I was there for many years. And when I started reading this book, I realized there was so much of it that I did not recognize and love. This book is a love story. So our writer is a teacher and a journalist, and she was teaching a class. She had a student bring in an essay, and in the essay, he talks about alligator poachers. And she's like, oh, well, what is this? So she decides she's going to research it. So she meets this detective, Jeff Baboda. Yeah, that's his name. Jeff Baboda. And it's like he was written in a novel. Like, you know, that gruff, retired detective guy? Like, that's him. And he's about to retire. He's almost done with his job. He's almost done with what he's doing. He's just like, this one last job. You know, like, you've read this in a book, but this is a real life guy. And he decides to go undercover and find these poachers. But in order to go undercover, he has to like give up his whole life. And one of the most impactful things in the book for me is that how hard it is for him to like leave his dogs, like his wife and kids, whatever, but like his dogs. So for 2 years, he builds up this alligator farm, and he starts meeting these people that come in, and it really is a story about like what causes people to go into these things, and like places where we thought, you know, people were judging what is happening to these people. We get their backstories, we get their whys, and we get an understanding that maybe we don't expect. It's the unexpected. Also, it's a love story to the nature of Florida, the Everglades, the swamplands. She is a native for several generations of Florida and Louisiana, so she's all over the swamps. And it made me realize, like, I really missed out on a lot of the nature that I had accessible to me back then. It's an incredible story. It's a love story to the people of the state. It's a love story to people who love animals. And it's just something that you didn't even know. And if you're sick of the man from Florida stories, this is a much better one, really. I really recommend it. So that's available as a physical book and a downloadable audiobook. And that's it.
Thank you, Angela. All right. So everyone, let's give one more round of applause for all of our book talkers: Nicole, Rosemary, Sophia, Rose, David, Summer, and Angela. Yay! All right. So for our virtual friends, I want you to put in the chat, and for you all out here, take a second and tell everybody at your table, what book from this evening are you most excited about? Here's the prizes. All right, and I'll grab your attention back, and please be sure to keep sharing with your new friends all the books that you are excited about. I want to give a shout out to our OPL staff that were working here tonight and helping make this event a success. So to Nancy, Ashley, Daisha, Stephanie, Audrey, Natalie, John, Jeff, Amy, Stacy, Margie, Ellie, and Candy, and Curtis also is here with Poppy. So thank you to them. Yeah. And thank you to our volunteer bartenders, Emily and Randy. If you missed part of our program tonight, we've been recording, so you can always view it again on Crowdcast. And at each of your tables on your chairs, you found a survey. So we would love your feedback on this event. So please scan the QR code here or on that paper survey and grab a copy and either leave it at your table or drop it at the registration table on your way out. For our virtual friends, Ashley can drop the link to this survey because it is slightly different than the prize survey that you did earlier. Okay. And speaking of that prize survey, let's give out some prizes. All right. So Angela, do you want to say? You can. Let's have you do it.
The whole thing?
No, just the first person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
This is a gift card for the $25 gift card to, is that the Bookworm one? No.
yes.
Yes, the Bookworm $25 gift card goes to.
Fiona Bryant.
So you can come on up to the stage and grab your prize. And I believe our marketing department may also grab a photo from you. Congratulations. Yay. Yeah.
That's great.
All right. And the $50 gift card to the Bookworm goes to
Me? No.
No.
Amanda Hartman.
Yay. Congratulations.
Oh, there she is.
Okay. Yeah. Next chapter? Was that the next chapter? Let me grab it. Or I'll give this one to her.
Okay.
There you go. Congratulations. I think they want to grab a photo from you.
Yes. Next
Okay,
chapter.
the next chapter, the $25 gift card to
Mary Beth Sarah.
congratulations.
She is there.
Oh, okay. Do we need to bring it to her?
We'll get it to you. We'll get it to you.
If you can come. Oh, thank you. Yeah. All right, and then
Okay.
oh, I already forgot all the I should have.
Congratulations. This looks like a check. Okay, the Book Nook
Oh, the book nook. Thank you. All right, and a gift card to the Book Nook.
goes to Danae Hilder, Nicole's sister. It's a conspiracy. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Oh,
There you go. There you go.
okay. And now we have multiple copies of The War Begins in Paris, our Omaha Reads book. And our first copy goes to
Holly Smith.
Yay! And copy number 2.
Samantha Salomon.
All right. And another copy.
Jackie Rapier.
Yay, Jackie. All right.
That's a good table over there.
Yeah. And 2 more. 1 more.
Deborah Ramirez.
There she is. Awesome. And our final copy of The War Begins in Paris.
Ashley Turner.
Yay. All right. Congratulations to everyone. Our virtual winners have been announced in the chat, and they can pick up their prizes at their selected branch. So, last question. Who has a birthday coming up? Oh, so at your table, the person with the closest birthday to today can take the book that is under the centerpiece. All right, and the moment you have all otherwise been waiting for, save the date for our next book bash, which will be Friday, February 7th. And this one will be virtual only. So I'm sorry. Write that on your survey and we'll okay. Thank you all so much for coming. We hope you are leaving with a long list of books to read. Be sure to check out the Bookworm table and Poppy outside. We will need to close the building in about 15 minutes, so be sure to grab your restroom or anything between now and then. Thank you again. Have a good night.